To our webinar this afternoon. Welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon. I'm Bev Schumacher. I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and supporting me is Vicki Robinson, who is in San Antonio, Texas. We are recording this. It will be saved. If you find some ideas you want to visit later, you can always go back to our recording. Or if someone else on your team would benefit from this session, they can always sign on and watch the webinar at a time that is more to their convenience. So that list there is things that I hope that you have available to you so that as we go through, we will not only be talking and showing, but we will also be doing some things. And now my thing doesn't want to go. Got it. I guess it wanted me to say that I understood. There we go. Title is Bookmaking: An Experience to Build Reading and Writing Skills for Early Learners and Their Families. In introducing myself, I have to explain why I say early learners and their families. My background was as a parent involvement coordinator. I worked for 10 years in the most ideal position in the world until my husband found a new job and we moved onward. But in that position, we did a lot of workshops with families where we would have them come and do like a make and take experience, like move from table to table to create something. Or have it as one of the things, if we had a speaker, that there would be a hands-on take-home kind of experience for them to do as well. Plus, I also worked with families when I did home visits and also when they came in for special programs, as well as going to the classrooms and doing some bookmaking. So our little character that you see there, he's holding up a book. So that book looks just like this. And what that is, it's a book that is made with a napkin. So you can see his is kind of a flowery pattern. So all I've done is opened up my napkin, put a piece of paper inside and stapled it in there. Couple things to caution you. Number one, if you're using staples, make sure you always cover those staples up with tape or a little dot so that there are no sharp points just to damage little fingers. The second thing I have to tell you is that when I was doing this at a workshop, someone raised their hand and they went, "Oh, but that violates what you said." It's always best to make a book in a conventional fashion because we're teaching young learners to move from left to right. So you want the pages in the book so that they can read it in that fashion. So we were making a book and someone says, "Oh, but that violates the rule. You should have picked some different napkins." So what she said was that, "Oh, I can't put paper in there because it would be top and bottom." So we simply said, take your napkin, refold it. And now that seam is over on the side and you're ready to make your book with that napkin. So just a small little point, but it does indeed make a difference in terms of making books with children. So as I said, I'm Bev Schumacher. I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and with me is Vicki from the San Antonio area. I had a company that I called Learning Props, and I'm honored to say that Vicki is taking over the intellectual property that I had created. And together we have worked in the last few years to add additional resources. So we'll share a little bit more with you a little bit later. So what are your challenges today? And there should have been 3 handouts that were attached to your Google Drive that Vicki sent out. And one of those sheets has this slide on it. Your challenge for what you are going to do in this next hour is I want you to, first of all, identify one topic or theme that you're going to be teaching. So think about something you want to share. It could be something with a holiday. It could be something with a skill that the student was learning. It could be featuring a certain letter of the alphabet. But you decide what would help you in exciting children and their families to be learners. So think of those topics and write them down. And then I'm also going to ask you to take away 3 ideas to implement or thoughts to share from our discussion today. It could be something you pass along to someone else, or it can be a strategy that you say, "Oh my gosh, I really like that book that was made out of a paper bag. I really want to do that with the students." So you decide. And the only way that the ideas that I share with you today are going to have any impact with what you do is if you promise to be intentional and purposeful in trying to carry those ideas out. Research says you have about 3 weeks from learning a new idea to being able to implement it. If you don't implement it in those three weeks, you are going to possibly lose that idea and not remember it again at a later date. So even if it's a crude sample you make it so that you have that as your sample. Also, when I was starting to do this, I was going to say to you, well, I'm not really a book author, but then I kind of laughed at myself and I go, no, I have been a book author. I started with the books that I'm sharing with you today. This is simple things made with paper bags, folding paper in certain ways. But then I went on to make other books because I needed books to support the games that we were making with youngsters. I couldn't guarantee I'd get the same books I needed each time. So I did 11 different books in English. We did 10 of those in Spanish English, Arabic English, and Chinese English. So indeed, I said to myself, I am a book author. I have done many books. So that is my background and where I'm coming from today. In terms of what Vicki and I are now doing now, we have a line of products. We've introduced 3 new games I'm really, really excited about. They are topics that I've not had a chance to address before, and working with Vicki, I had the opportunity to create those. We're putting together some family packs so that each month we can have an activity for children to do with their families. And we also do some things like door hangers, a transition game for kindergarten, many different take-home projects that could be done at a staff meeting. So here are the 3 new topics I said I was so excited about. I just have to show you because I'm really proud. There's one called Safe Me, one called Healthy Me, and one called That's Me. And these are topics that we talk about in school, but the reality is teaching children to be safe happens because parents enforce the rules at home. We don't very often take our children out of the building and have them cross the street so we can practice safety rules. But those are things that we can have parents do all the time. So those are the 3 new babies that I have. As to building a literacy foundation, it is a very complex skill. Go ahead and read those words that are there. And you probably even thought of additional words beyond that. But what I want you to know is through the process of making books, we can reach the learner in a different way than just having them look at a book. This webinar's purpose is to encourage and create the creation of books and to invite students and families to be authors. I'm going to stop and let you read. I have been chasing a tickle in my throat since the last month and a half, and I'm trying to avoid coughing. So go ahead and read those things on that page, please. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about using books is that when we create books, we can address topics that are personal to children and serve specific purposes in their learning adventure. So this next slide talks about the diversity and family stories that can be acknowledged when books are created. We need to honor those partnerships with families, and we need to encourage them to be our partners. And if you've heard presentations I've done before, we've done a number of webinars that we've recorded. I usually end up telling you at some time that school plus home equals learning. In other words, you're going to do as much as you can to build literacy at school. We're going to have families do as much as they can, and the total outcome is the learning. So that's just my formula, and you will hear me say it over and over again. So this is the picture of the handout that I had printed up for you so that you could take some notes on it. It lists all the different styles of books at the bottom, and those should be on your Google Drive. If you have any issue with that, let Vicki know. She's manning the Zoom call. So just let her know if there's something that did not work for you. But there's an arrow there, and guess what it says there? It's to remind you to identify one topic, theme, or subject matter that you will be teaching, but the ideas I'm sharing will be pertinent to you. Bookmaking can be done as a class project. It can be done on an individual basis or as a family engagement event. This happened to be a picture I took at a school that we had a Saturday workshop. People could drop in at their convenience, and there were different styles of making books that they were doing during the day. So when we're starting to talk about making books, one of the things I want you to realize is there's many ways to bind your book or to anchor them. So as I pointed out with the first book that I showed you, the napkin book, we can easily put a staple in. The upper corner is a stapler that we typically have on our desk. There's also a version called the long arm stapler, which is really, really cool, or one called a saddleback stapler. So if you're going to be doing a lot of bookmaking, these are really awesome because you can get a staple halfway into the book rather than just having to fold or crinkle the paper to get the other stapler. Across the top, you'll also see what I call cable ties, the things we would hold all the wires that are behind our desk together in one bundle. They work great. I do, however, do suggest that after you have zipped them, that you do drop a little dot of glue into them and that you then cut off the extra tail on them. Always make sure there's enough to make the loop. We can use a common yarn. We can use these things called book rings. I love the book rings, and I put it someplace. I can't even show you. Oh, well. The book ring will open. You put the pages through and you snap it shut. One of the things I learned very quickly from my preschool students was that they could take those apart too with a little bit of diligence. And so what happened usually to those books that they made? Mysteriously, they would just be put away for a little bit. And when I had the chance to put a permanent dot of glue on each of those little rings, I snapped them back together and kazam, they never did come apart again after that. Pipe cleaners is another great thing to use. You also can stitch books. And I'm serious. I use my sewing machine, dedicate a needle to paper because that needle will get dull. So what I'm holding up in front of you is a book that all I did was folded the paper and I used my sewing machine to do a stitch through it. The stitches that you do through it should be very long stitches. If you do it too close together, it's going to be perforated and it's going to come apart. So in the last corner down there, you will see bread twisters. They're great things to be able to use as well. And they come with most loaves of bread. So easy thing to find. The first example I'm showing you here is a paper plate book. And I did not have you get out paper plates, but I know that you can figure out what I'm talking about. The little guy in the upper left-hand corner happens to be my grandson. And he had a baby sister. And so when I was watching the two of them one day, I said, Dylan, let's make Lily a new book. So what we did is, with his help, learning his colors, we went from room to room and we took pictures of different items that were toys in their home. And then we glued them onto the paper plate. What I did not anticipate, the tears to Grandma's eyes, when he sat down on the floor right next to little sister, and he told her about all the toys that she was going to play with and what they were going to do with their toys together. There are some other samples there for you as well to see. You don't need a whole plate. You could do a study about snails and use just a half a sheet, but you can do so many different things with them. So do give a thought to how you can use those paper plates. White plates are obviously very, very available. You can also put the answers on the back side if you choose to write an answer on there, but they are very durable for the users. The next one is one of my favorite kinds of books, and that one is what I call a flap book. I'll find it here. So here's my sample that I was going to share with you. I don't know if you can read it or not. Why does a mother kangaroo hate rainy days? The answer is tucked underneath the flap. It's because the children have to play inside. So this was one that I did with riddles. This was actually done with a 3rd and 4th grade student. You know the difference between a candy bar and a rotten apple? The answer is good, then you can eat the apple. So all that we did was put the question on the body and the answer under the flap. This one is bound together with cable ties. Okay, so I asked you to get a paper bag. It doesn't matter what size paper bag you're using. You can use a full-size shopping bag or you could use a small one. Notice on the pictures that I have there for you that the bag is flapped open. So that's where you would put your answer. So take the paper bag that you have, make sure that the bag opens to the left as it's laying in front of you. Put on the body of the bag, put a question here. So you're just giving yourself that cue that you're going to remember later. Put the question here, and then open the flap, and under the flap, you're going to write the answer to whatever the question is. It could be a picture. So you look at the one that's on the bottom. Do you know what this is? Can you tell from that picture what the rest of that object might look like? If you guess that that was a shoe, you're absolutely right. You were just able to lift the flap and the answer was right there for the children to be able to see. We've also done this one for family programs. So instead of our spending a lot of time making the parents think of things and intimidating parents who aren't strong writers to write, we would very often give them labels instead. So all you have to do is put the labels on the bag and then they can tuck the answer underneath. And if you can include a picture of their children, you've really gotten them excited about it. So the unopened bag allows the book creator to share a question, and the area under the flap can contain an image or an answer to it. The next one, you are going to need a piece of paper. Get your scissors out. You're going to need a rubber band and one more of your bags. Okay, what you're going to do with your piece of paper is you're going to fold the piece of paper so that that piece of paper, and for our purposes, you only need one piece of paper. You are just going to tuck this underneath the flap. Okay. And that will tell me from the back that I can draw a line, and it'll tell me the size of my paper. Okay, so on the back, all I've done is traced around that so I know the right size. And if you're doing this for a workshop with families there or students, you can pre-cut your paper once you know the size of bag. There's just a slight variance in them, but make sure that it does fit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to cut it out so that becomes your bag. I know it's not going to be a lengthy book for you, but at least it will be the prototype that you need to be able to carry this idea later on, because you've got these great ideas of things you want to do with creating books to be teaching tools. So going back to my tuck bag, what I'm going to do is take this piece of paper. I've stuck the paper bag, put the paper underneath the flap, and now I'm going to lift my flap. I fold the piece of bag so that the paper is tucked inside. So there it is. I'm going to hold my paper inside by opening up the paper with the bag. Okay, and I'm going to tear just a little notch from the top of the bag down about an inch or so. And I'm going to do that on the opposite side as well. So I've torn from the edge of the bag through the paper and the bag about an inch down. And now I'm going to take the rubber band and I'm going to put the rubber band so it fits into those two notches. If my bag curls up, what that tells me is my rubber band's too tight and I just need to deepen my notch a little bit to be able to do. So here's our bag, but of course we need a handle. So I'm going to have you take the one of the pieces of pipe cleaner. We're going to cut off about 2.5 inches off of the one end. You're going to use your pencil or your paper punch, whichever one you have that you want to use. You're going to take your paper bag and you are going to punch a hole at the top of the bag. 2 of them, one on each side of the middle. Only if your paper punch wants to fit through there. It's hard to hold it up and do a paper punch. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to put your pipe cleaner through there, twist it around. And you'll see in the pictures that I have another one that looks more like a toolbox. That one was made for a dad event, and they picked up right away that that was either a briefcase or a toolbox. So I thought that was pretty clever of the kids to figure out that that was a different style of book that we made. So here's my little tucked bag. So think about what you can do with that idea and what could be tucked inside. I did a program with a Montessori school, and they used this strategy to talk about money. And what they did is use rubber stamps, and they stamped in different coins. And then they talked about the value of the coins. So that is the second type of paper bag. Before I forget, I'm going to have you take this piece of pipe cleaner that you have. You're going to make the letter J at the bottom of it. And you're going to take just the slightest bit at the top and you can bend it down. The wire that's inside that pipe cleaner can sometimes be pretty sharp. And if it's sharp, we don't want it to damage anybody's little fingers. What you're going to do is take your piece of yarn and lay it right over top of that hook on the bottom. And now you're going to squeeze it tight. Do you recognize what you've just created? A sewing needle. So you can take that idea that I had just showed you with the tuck book, and notice here how the yarn is hanging from the bottom. And what we did with this one, instead of the rubber band, is we just stitched through it with the pipe cleaners. You can poke some holes in it. You can use a pencil and poke holes through it as well. And for some people who have other ideas about doing sewing needles, this is not a friendly size piece for very young children, but bobby pins work really well to hook on the end of a pipe cleaner. And therefore it makes a pipe cleaner on the end of the yarn. It makes a wonderful sewing needle as well. The next idea I want to show you is what I call an envelope book. So what we have done to create this book is we have a question or something put on the outside of the envelope. And then the envelope itself is sealed, so it's permanently a pocket. So the question on this front page on this one says, "The Very Hungry Caterpillar" by Eric Carlisle. "In the light of the," left a blank, "a little egg lay on a," so after they've read the story, "on the light of the moon," and here's the little egg. I'm always going to go to the right instead of the left. And what we did to put the little egg on there is we used a dot of hot glue gun, and we put a little dot on there. So you can tell that this was a story that children liked, and we made it into a take-home kind of activity for them to be able to talk about the story over and over. The first time I did this book, it was really kind of an accident on my part. You're not supposed to admit that when something turns out that you didn't ever think was going to work that way. We were doing a summer workshop, and parents could accompany us with their child to go to the zoo. But in order to go to the zoo, they had to attend workshop that I taught. So what did we do at the workshop? I knew the animals that we would be seeing in our excursion through the zoo. The families looked up in encyclopedias, online, books we had, and they came up with clues about each animal. They each selected one. And from there, they put together these pockets. You can tell how yellow the tape is on the one that I have showing there. But they would ask a question about a camel had one hump or two humps, and they talk about the differences between. Why it was such a shock to me was that the day we went on the field trip, I listened to the families that I was there to work with, and my families were the absolute expert on working on knowing things about animals. So the kids were like so proud. "My mom knows the difference between an Asian and an African elephant." Just how easy it was for them to pick up that information and to be knowledgeable about it because they made the book and shared it with the children. The one on the bottom is done as a rhyming book. So the picture itself or the sticker on there says, "This is a pig," and it rhymes with. And so they picked pictures and they put things in their envelopes. Okay, the next slide I want to share with you, you have the folded directions for doing that. The folded directions look like this, and it will guide you through this process. The first folded book I did, I saved for the longest time because I had to take it apart and put it back together again many times before I really remembered exactly how to do it. So take a piece of paper, any paper that you have, and I did send you a handout about hand washing. So that handout looks like this, but I don't want you to practice it on that document right away. So let's just do this one first. This is going to be hard because I'm used to doing this in a room where I can see people everywhere, and I would ask them to hold it up to make sure they were doing it right. So I'm going to count on you to be following the directions. You are going to take that piece of paper and fold it the long way so that it's one long skinny piece of paper. That's fold one. Fold number two, you are going to unfold it and refold it, this time the opposite directions. If we were doing this with a book that's printed, the printed words would be on the outside. Okay. The third step is we're going to take one of the flaps from one side and we're going to bring it up to the fold line. So I picked it up from the bottom edge where it's free and I'm bringing it up to the fold line where we are again creasing it. Now I'm going to do the same thing just by turning the paper over and doing it again. So from the edge up to the fold. And this is my stage to tell me if we've reached the point. So hold on to the flaps. If you have two bird wings to it, you are in the right position for doing this. Okay, let me go through it one more time. We started with a piece of paper. We folded it in half the long way. We unfolded it. We folded it in half the shorter way. We took one side of the flap, we folded it up. We took the other side of the flap and we folded it up. We held it from the fold and to see that we had the bird wings. You're now going to cut from the top of the fold down to this crease. So not all the way through these flaps on the side, just the folded piece in the middle. So all we've done is cut from the fold to the crease. And now we're going to drop this down. And we just kind of fold it around the middle. It doesn't work as well when I'm doing it up in the air and my pages aren't totally even, but I now have an 8-page mini book. Okay, so if you're brave and you have your handout in front of you, we're going to do the very same thing with this one. Repeat the process, fold it in half the long way. And when you print things off, the handout that I shared with you should be printed with no margins to your printer. If your printer adds a margin, it throws that piece of paper off one direction or another. Now we're going to unfold it and fold it in half so that it's the shorter way. Printed side is out. Now I take one side and I fold it up to the fold. By the way, I made this little booklet. I was doing a workshop out of state. I was doing something for Alabama, and they wanted us to have some kind of something we shared with families that would cross different content areas. So washing your hands is something that we can talk about with children and how we use our hands and how we work with others. So that is what the theme behind this little mini booklet is. So once I have my flappy wings, printed sides out, I again cut on that crease. This time it'll be easier because the front of the book says hands, so you can find that page and fold everything else behind it. Vicki, did I lose a dozen people? Guess not. Okay.
I think you're good. Thank you.
Okay. And the larger size paper you use, the bigger the book gets. So if you have a piece of construction paper, it's a little stiff to fold, but it makes a very lovely weight for younger children. So you'll see on the slide, there are a couple of other books that I've done there. One of them says, what a fun day we had today. It was something that we just talked about, what we learned during the day. We made the little mini folded books to send home with the children. We did a workshop where they were counting. And so we had a fishbowl on each page. So 1 fish, 2 fish, 3 fish, you get the idea. And another one is called Count With Me. It was an activity that I did for a research project. So those were the directions. The next one that we want to talk about are what I call Ziploc bags. What happens is pictures and objects are put into those bags to tell the book story. You do have to put a piece of paper between the pages, just because of the fact that if you didn't, you would see straight through and it would be very confusing. What's neat about this type of book is it can be sanitized. So grab the Ziploc bags if you've got those out. Okay, we're going to bind the book on the side. How are we going to bind the book on the side? Well, you decide how you want to do it. This is one that works good with a sewing machine, that you can sew that zipper area shut so they can't open it. You can use your sewing needle and you can tie it in that way. But what you're going to do is you're going to put in each one a piece of paper. So again, grab a piece of paper. threw away the piece I used here. Yeah. I thought I was gonna be wise and have that to work with. So figure out what size my piece of paper has to be. Cut it to the right size. I did forget the paper the first time I did this on a home visit. We had the most confusing book because you could see straight through to page 10 of all the items that were in the bag. So I learned quickly to take paper with me at the next visit so that we didn't do the same thing over and over again. You'll see in the upper corner there's a little book that was a printout that was on the computer available at one time from a diaper company in order to be able to teach families about toileting. Obviously, taking it into the restroom area would be a good thing if it could be wiped and sanitized. On the lower picture, you see a family picture, a family book being taken care of, where families were invited to use a strategy in order to make a take-home book. So that's what your Ziploc bag would look like. And again, you decide what kind of binding you want on the side of that. This next one is what I call a box book. I don't believe in throwing much away. Oops, I forgot to share. Can I back step one step here? Okay, what I didn't share with you is this is one of the zip bags that we did send home. What we did is we just used one ring. We gave them five bags, and we told them to go on a nature hunt in their community. And I had to reproduce the book that touched my heart the greatest. It says, "These are rocks. I found them on the road. The road is breaking up. The storm and winter did it." Does that in any way make you question whether that family went out searching for something? And by the way, it was the nicest piece of city asphalt you could ever ask for, but it was a rock to a young man who was out doing this. So each page had different things that they picked up, from sticks to nuts to whatever. But it was a really special project that the families enjoyed doing, and it got them out in nature to do things. Okay, on to the box thing here. So what I'm talking about is saving like a cereal box. I'm not promoting anybody's brand, but here's a box. And what I did is I cut the top flaps off, the bottom flaps, and one of the side flaps. So right here is where the box folded before. I'm going to instead fold these two sides together and make a real hard crease down here. Now it's up to me if I want to do additional pages to it, or if I just want to put paper inside, or if I want to cover the printed area inside. It's totally up to you what you decide you want to do. But you'll see in the top picture there, it says "my book." That was decorated by using a hot glue gun, but a cool version. In other words, there's two different versions of hot glue guns, and of glue guns, I should say. One that gets very hot, I would not use with young children, but parents could use those. But they're also to use the one that's a cool version of that. On the bottom, you see another one that's just punched and has a piece of yarn holding it together. We did a texture book for the younger children in our program. And so you'll see that we use things like sandpaper and paper doilies, things that they could feel and touch. And actually, in my version that I have here to kind of show you, we put bubble wrap on the back. We put some nice soft materials on the inside, like quilting material and flannel. We used a piece that would go underneath a carpet. We used a real soft, silky kind of thing, like that would be a tablecloth. So we had all these great textures for the children to touch and to be able to feel it. And I show you again on the side of that one, some of the different closure styles. That one is done with a piece of yarn. There's a piece of pipe cleaner that was used. The zip ties was used as one spot. So I just did that as a sample, taking it off to a workshop one day. The next one that we can take a look at is about what I call shape books. So shape books are used using some kind of a die cutting resource. We had a resource center in our district. I could go there and I could cut out as much as I possibly wanted to, as long as I brought my own paper. Sometimes a public library will let people do it. There are many people who have like a physics machine that will do the same kind of thing. But what we're doing is we're making a theme book using the die cut machines, or we could cut them out with scissors as well. The left side, if it's placed on the fold and not cut through, and then we insert the paper in there before cutting them out, it gives us an instant little book. So I don't know if you followed what I'm trying to say here. So this is a picture of a fishbowl. Okay. So this side of the fishbowl is a little bit less curved than the other, so that we could put paper inside of it and make it into a book. So we just use one piece of paper in here to kind of show you. There are many dies that lend themselves very, very well to them. One of them that I liked in the district was a little barn, and these doors on the front are also cut. So we could glue behind each of the barn doors an animal that they could talk about and discuss. So that was a way that we used to introduce some topics of instruction and concepts that many of our city children did not have exposure to. So take a look at some of the other shapes that are on there. There's a bear, there's a shamrock, there's a heart. You can see pretty clearly on the heart how that is not made in the same curvature as the opposite side, but it works great for making a little mini book or an I love you mom kind of note that you can send out. Do not throw away the pieces after you use them, by the way, as well. So I hit forward here. Let me go back just a second here. You can make your own shape cutouts. So this is the letter L. Just by cutting paper, I can make letters. This one says letter Z. That hole was cut with a die cut machine, but we then saved that piece and we glued it inside as well. So working with younger children, you might have them trace the letters rather than trying to write them, but this gives them a guide that they can possibly do. So you could do letter books from A to Z if you chose to. This next one is what I call a file folder book, and I don't have any better example to kind of show you, but this is one that I would not do with a class necessarily, but I would do to share information with a class. So the top one is my grandson spending a day with grandma. And so we took pictures of what we did during our day. And then when he was taking a nap, I hurriedly tried to print them all off, and we wrote a little caption so we could talk about our day. And we could then give mom the book to take home, so she didn't feel bad like he missed her all day. So just what grandmas do. The bottom picture is a picture of one that I did for a classroom. This particular teacher was doing some whining over lunch and said, I have not had a good response to our open house. And even though I've invited all of those parents in, I still have not met a lot of my families. So I said, well, can I come to your classroom? So I went to her classroom and I snapped pictures and I told a story about what a day was like in her classroom. And of course, teachers' pictures were in there, etc. So this little booklet that was made by just putting pictures on a file folder. And if you need to do 2 folders together or 3, you certainly can do that. But we did laminate them. And I gave it to her and I said, here you go. Now you can explain this to your families. We'd put a pocket on the back so she could put a personal note and some ideas of activities that were coming up that families might want to attend. And of course, another invitation to meet with her. But we sent that home. That was the intention. She looked at me as I handed that to me and said, oh my, that's beautiful. But you know, Bev, it'll never come back. And I said, well, you know what? I know the person who made it. And I know that she will make you a new one if you need it. She sent it home to every family that had not come in for their orientation meeting. And what she found was that the classrooms, the parents were so excited to see what their school day was like. And now they had a conversation point to be able to talk about their youngsters' time in her classroom. Did I have to make new ones? I did. I had to make 8 of them the next year because she told the rest of the classes that, oh, that was so neat. You should see how good that worked. So I had to make one for each class. If you're doing it for your classroom, though, I do caution you, make sure that every child in that classroom is represented in the pictures. Do not leave anyone out. So if a new student comes to class, then make sure there's room in that folder to put a picture of them in and saying, we welcome so-and-so to our classroom. But every parent wants to find their child in that type of a book. The next one is what I call a side anchored book. So let me show you my favorite one, because this one is great for health things. It is a toothbrush that anchors the side. So what we did is we took a piece of paper. So just take one piece of paper and fold it in half. And half again, and you can make these separate pages if you want. They don't have to stay in that fashion. But you're going to have a piece of paper folded. You're going to use your paper punch. You are going to go on that fold, and you're going to go as far as your punch will reach, and you're going to make a hole. You're going to do the same thing from the bottom. So I have a hole from both the bottom and the top. And what you're then going to do is use one of your rubber bands. And you're going to take the rubber band, you're going to put it through the hole. This is where we're going to use your pencil on this one. So hopefully you have your pencil. You're going to slide that pencil into that hole. And of course, as soon as I put it on my side, there it is. So you're going to just reach almost up to the hole. And now you're going to have to pull the rubber band. It takes about 3 hands to do it. But you're going to then slip that over the top of the pencil as well and push it all the way to the top. I can't do it with not enough hands here. I hope you're struggling there trying to make this too. My rubber band's too tight. I picked too tight of a rubber band. You might have to experiment. So here's my book. It's put together with the pencil being the side anchor. You could use crayons, you could use a stick from taking a nature walk, you can take chopsticks and use chopsticks. So many different ways of being able to do that idea. And like I said, I like the toothbrush. It's a nice way to talk about something helpful. And I'm going to encourage you to do that same thing we just did with the side anchor, and take another piece of paper and do the very same thing, fold it in half. And then you're going to fold it in half again. So there's your paper. Use your paper punch and reach down as far as you can to put your punches right on the fold. This time, you're going to put your pipe cleaner through. And you want the pipe cleaners to join on the outside. Join it so that you do have them holding together, but you also want to leave a significant tail on one end of your pipe cleaner. So we're holding it together with the pipe cleaner. And the reason why we want the significant tail is you're going to use the other pencil that I asked you to have out to be able to do this book. And we're going to just curl it around so it's the holder for my pencil. So now if I'm going outside and we're going to do some note taking of something outside before we come back in, there we have the pencil already stored with the little mini book. And children, no matter how far they are in the process of being a writer or a reader, they get excited when they can make their own marks on the paper. And if we need to, we write down the words that they tell us that they said. So that was another idea for using that particular anchor style. The next one requires 2 sets of paper. So get one set out first and use 2 pieces of paper together. This is called a notched style binding. And the other is called slit and tuck. What we're gonna do is fold two pieces of paper together on the side. And if you want to use a half sheet, go ahead, because this is just wasting paper, I know, but the easiest way to practice something is to do that. We're then gonna use our scissors. And let's just fold so you have a line, fold about a half an inch back of that. So I've taken my book on this side and I've just folded like a half an inch to stand up. I'm then going to go about every 3/4 of an inch to an inch apart. And I'm making notches all the way up. And what we're then going to do is we're going to fold one notch to the front, one notch to the back, front, back, front, back, front, back. Somewhere, someone listening to me is going, oh, that's a novel idea, but I don't kind of like all the fringe happening on this side. Then get some wide tape and cover it up so that it folds it back down and it stays closed. But then you can go inside, and just for the fact that it's two pieces of paper together, it really is a fairly secure book. So that's one idea for a slit paper book. We're going to do the same thing again. Two pieces of paper or just one piece of paper cut in half. And we're going to fold it in half. And just to make this easier to do, I'm going to have you do it with your paper punch as well. So we're going to come from the top down. And punch it on the fold and do the same thing on the other end. Okay, what we're going to do is separate the pieces of paper. We're going to take the one notched edge and we're going to tear from the top edge of the paper down to the hole. It's just a small half-inch kind of tear from the top to the hole. Turn it over so that you do the bottom side the same way, notch to the hole. Now you're going to take your scissors and you are going to cut from the bottom hole to the top hole. On the second sheet of paper, you're cutting from the hole from the bottom to the top so that you have a big slit in the middle. In order to put these pieces of paper together, we're going to gently fold the first one we did. We're going to slide it into the other paper. We're going to pull the bottom edge down. And then just gently, because it is paper, we're going to unroll it. And what you end up with is an X kind of thing. And I have a 4-page book ready to do something with. Did everybody follow? What we did is folded a piece of paper, so 2 pages were together. We punched a hole from the top edge and from the bottom edge to be our markers. We tore one sheet from the top edge to the hole, flipped it over, did it from the bottom to the hole. Then we took the second piece of paper, cut it between hole and hole, so there was a slit all the way up the middle. And then we slid them gently together. And again, if you want to make it more secure, add some tape to it if you would like. If you use like a piece of construction paper, that really will firm up your book as well. So you might use one piece for the outside and use just regular sheets of paper on the inside. This is another style of book, and this one is called a doorknob book. We had access in the district to a die that would allow me to cut door hangers out. Matter of fact, that's where I started making door hangers. I went down to the district center and I printed paper saying, hi, you had a visitor from so-and-so today. And what happened is we did so many of those door hangers that we needed to do them in mass production because my staff kind of took them out of my closet faster than I was using them. So that idea then became a book. So what you have there is the very same idea as a folded piece of paper, but because it could be hung on a child's doorknob, it gets them more excited about the literacy process. So ours was rounded in the district. If you want, you can do the same thing with a rectangular piece. And if you don't have a die cut to cut that circle in the middle and to make a notch, you can just cut a great big letter X that it can be slid over the doorknob. It has to be pretty ample size of an X to fit through, but then the paper goes on the inside. You'll notice the one on the right, it has just a little bitty dot on it, one of these sticker dots. Do you remember why we put that there? To avoid cutting fingers with staples. This is one called the Band-Aid book. The Band-Aid book was one that kind of was born out of the fact that we needed to have some conversation about different body parts. So what we did is we made different pages. We went to the printer, we printed things off, and then we let the children put the Band-Aids on different parts of their body. So this was on the elbow, on the foot, on fingers. So we used the idea of Band-Aids. Weren't a very expensive project, but it sure did get a hit with the children that were using them. The next one is one that is stitched on fabric. And this is a credit of my children that they made this for baby brother. I did one myself one time, but it wasn't nearly as fun. What came out of my doing this is the brother made the bottom book and the sister made the top one. And you will notice that sister used things like trees, and you can't tell all the details on the nice curly hair little sister there, but she was well represented there. And then there was rainbows and hearts on the other side. Her brother's book had pictures of sports balls, had pictures of farm tractors, had pictures of doing things outside. It just reminded me over and over again how much children's experiences can be told by making their own books. And the advantage was it was washable. It actually started with a piece of fabric that at one time was a curtain in our home, and it made a wonderful piece. I just did zigzag the bottom so that they wouldn't keep unraveling forever. But that's how that book was made. It can be made with markers. It can be made with crayons that are ironed on. So look at various projects that are there. But if you have younger children, this is a nice project to do. Some other ideas, there's other resources to enhance created books. Look for stickers, look for rubber stamps, look for pictures. Remember I told you at the beginning about the flap book? Here are the pictures that came from the flap book. There's a shoe, there's a picture of a puppy. So just printing off pictures of things that you want the children to be working on. It might be letter sounds, it might be blends, it might be rhymes, but they can then use those to create their work. If they have their own drawing or illustration inside, their ownership of that book goes skyrocket high. So your challenge, when I started with you today, I said, think of one theme or concept that you are going to be teaching. Vicki, can you unmute anybody who wants to talk? We're not a very big group. Who all is out there that would be willing to share? Just go ahead and speak. What's a topic you would make a book on?
Well, I guess I can talk, and I'm going to close the door since I'm up where everyone is at. So we were closed for winter break. And so the children had some encouraging, I guess, projects in the snow, going to write their names. And if there was something that was unique to each of them, then we encouraged them to see if they could draw that in the snow. So as you were sharing, I thought we could really take all of those pictures and really create them into a winter wonderland book, because we had already worked on those concepts before the snow. So we could incorporate all of that in it. I could just really seeing it being this big book.
And which style are you going to use?
Ma'am?
Oh, is there a particular style that you saw that went, oh, I could make this as a file folder book or whatever?
Well, I, s- I saw lots of things that we're going to do, but that one stood out the most as far as incorporating the book. I wasn't sure if we are going to do the floor model, which you didn't share, but I really love um, the cereal box one as well. And then the one where we had the multiple pages, we could do all about me because they're preparing for kindergarten, and just make it unique toward each individual child with just skills that we've been working on throughout the year and things that are really special to them to help encourage the literacy and the reading, matching pictures with words, and it be their own creation, if you will. So I'm excited about several things.
You've made my day. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad those
I have
ideas.
lots. I have lots of notes.
Good. Hope you can read them later.
I hope I can too.
If not, the
Thank
slides will
you.
be archived and you can go back and visit. So,
Yes, thank you.
anybody else share with us? Well, Vicki and I have also put together a game about transitioning to kindergarten. Like Janice just said, kids have to be reminded about the skills they've learned over the year and make sure that over the summer they don't forget about those. So we have found in so many ways in my research, et cetera, that games really do make a difference for families. They do it from beginning to end. So we've done both a game for preschoolers who are maybe entering into a 4-year-old classroom come fall, or it can be then also one for kindergarten. So those leaving your 4K program have something to do over the summer. And it's a matter of teaching the families as well as teaching the children about getting ready for school, because it's a big transition for everyone as they move from one grade level to another, and very often to a different building and different site. One last slide. We thank you so very much for coming. This is again the card that I have at the top there about Healthy Me. We can talk about good nutrition, but when we put questions in there about making the right choice between a piece of candy or a piece of fruit, that's when the lesson really hits home to the youngsters. And as I said at the beginning, we put together what we call solution packs. We have a set for 3s and a set for 4s, so that every month of the year, the teacher could open a box and have a resource to equip families to work with learning at home. That partnership between family and home makes a difference in learning. Remember, school plus home equals learning, which I shared at the beginning. Vicki, what do they need to do if they need a certificate?
Please put your name in the chat box or send me a quick email. Either way, it works perfect. Email is Vicki, VICKI @lonestareducation.org, and I'll get that certificate for you.
Any other things we need to add, Vicki?
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate it. We try to do these webinars every 6 to 8 weeks. So we have you on a list to contact, and you'll be getting an invitation to the next one.
We also have a group of them that are archived, and Vicki has that information as well, that she can share with you the topics that we've already done. Sometimes these make good conversation things for staff training. So take a look at the other topics we have done. My passion has been working with families and young children. I hope that you caught that contagious feeling that I have. The other contagious stuff I have going on with me right now, I don't want you to catch that, but I'm grateful I made it through without a coughing fit. I have 3 cough drops sitting here just in case. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.